At 55, I had everything I thought I ever wanted. My name on the company building. A team of 500 hanging on my every word. A multi-million-dollar acquisition deal just weeks away. Success, they called it. Then, one evening, my 12-year-old son looked me in the eye and said, "You're really good at running your company, Dad, but you're terrible at being a father." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it hurt more than I expected. I stood there in the kitchen, still in my tailored suit, holding my briefcase like a shield, and I realized I had no comeback. Not a word. Because he was right. In the last decade, I had missed his first piano recital, his science fair victory, his first heartbreak. I couldn't even name his best friend. I had launched 4 companies, raised millions in funding, been a keynote speaker on 5 continents, but I hadn't been there the night he was scared of the thunderstorm and asked for me. I built an empire from scratch, but my family? I had let it silently erode. What happened after that night forced me to confront everything I believed about success, sacrifice, and love. And it made me realize that being a father isn't about providing. It's about being present. If you're chasing your dreams and wondering if your loved ones understand, this story might just save you from waking up too late. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, where dreams rarely made it past the county line. My father was a man of broken promises. He'd tell me he was coming to my baseball games, that we'd go fishing on weekends, that one day he'd fix the hole in the roof over my bedroom. But none of those ever happened. One morning when I was 8, he was just gone. A note from my mother, a suitcase missing, and a boy left behind who learned far too early how fragile a promise can be. That hole in the roof stayed for 2 more winters. I swore then and there I would never be that kind of man. I told myself I'd give my future family everything I never had: security, stability, the kind of life you see in commercials. But I misunderstood what everything really meant. I thought it was about bank accounts and job titles. I believed love could be measured in what you could provide, not how often you showed up. I met Ellie during a night class in college. I was working full-time at a grocery warehouse, barely scraping together tuition for a state school business degree. She was studying early childhood education. We both looked exhausted most nights, me from lifting crates, her from babysitting and classes. But somehow, we found comfort in each other's weariness. We shared vending machine dinners, late-night study sessions, and dreams too big for our means. We married 6 months after graduation. I didn't have a ring, just a promise, and she said yes anyway. I landed an entry-level job at a small IT consulting firm. It paid peanuts, but it was a foot in the door. Ellie got hired by a local elementary school, teaching 2nd graders. We moved into a 1-bedroom apartment with peeling linoleum and a heater that moaned all winter. We were broke, tired, and completely happy. For a while, I balanced things well. I came home on time, cooked dinner when Ellie stayed late grading papers, went to Sunday brunch with her parents, watched game shows in bed with her just to unwind. We dreamed together about a small house with a yard, maybe 2 kids, and enough money to not check our bank account every time we filled the tank. But hunger is a funny thing. Once I got my first promotion, junior project manager, it lit something inside me I didn't know was there. A drive not just to succeed, but to never feel powerless again. That job led to another and another. By 30, I was a senior consultant working with Fortune 500s, racking up airline miles like currency. I told Ellie every late night and red-eye flight was for our future. I'm building something for us, I'd say, and I believed it. Still, something was missing. Every time I reached a new level, it didn't feel like enough. I wanted more, not just to provide, but to prove something to that 8-year-old version of me, that I could be the man who never walked away. Ironically, that obsession slowly pulled me in the exact direction I'd feared as a child. When Ellie got pregnant with our son Jack, I felt a wave of pride I can't describe. I promised myself I'd be there for everything. First words, first steps, scraped knees, school plays. But just a month after he was born, I left for a conference in Seattle, then London, then Singapore. I didn't realize it then, but I had begun outsourcing fatherhood. Ellie took the night shifts, the doctor appointments, the lullabies. I took the business calls, the boardroom wins, the LinkedIn praise. And then came the startup idea, a software tool to streamline multi-office project management. I pitched it to 2 VCs, and by the third one, I had seed funding and 2 developers working in my garage. Ellie smiled, held Jack on her hip, and said, "Just promise you'll still be around." I promised. And just like my father, I meant it when I said it. But something in me whispered that this was the moment. This was my shot to finally build something permanent, something big enough that no child of mine would ever feel like I did, so I chased it. I didn't know then how much it would cost. By the time my startup landed its Series A funding, my days had shrunk into cycles of caffeine, code reviews, investor calls, and crisis meetings. I was working 14 to 16 hours a day, sometimes more if a product bug surfaced overnight. I came home late, usually after Jack was asleep, and if I was lucky, Ellie had left dinner out for me, cold but neatly wrapped in foil with a little sticky note that read, "Reheat me, love you." I told myself this grind was temporary, that once we launched version 2.0 or hired a new VP of engineering or locked down the next round of capital, I'd reclaim my evenings. But those milestones came and went, and so did the time. Eventually, I stopped bothering to pretend I'd make it home for dinner. I'd eat takeout at my desk, lights off, phone glowing, telling myself the silence meant productivity. Ellie stopped texting to ask what time I'd be home. Jack stopped waiting by the door. I began to notice subtle changes. Ellie, once bubbly and optimistic, now answered questions with soft shrugs and half smiles. When we did talk, it was logistics, groceries, bills, doctor's appointments, conversations about dreams, weekend plans, even parenting philosophies. Those vanished. Our bedroom, once filled with whispers and laughter, became quiet, functional. Jack, who once ran to me yelling, "Daddy!" when I came home, now barely looked up from his Legos. He stopped asking me to read bedtime stories, stopped offering me his latest crayon drawing. One night, I bent down to kiss his head, and he pulled away slightly. Not rude, just unfamiliar. On our 10th wedding anniversary, I had a board presentation in New York. I completely forgot the date. Didn't send flowers, didn't call. That night, Ellie cooked dinner, salmon, my favorite, and we ate mostly in silence. Only afterward did she say, almost like a whisper, 10 years. I looked at her blankly. She didn't repeat it, just stood, cleared the plates, and went to bed early. I wanted to feel something, guilt, shame, regret, but I was too tired. My mind was still spinning from the day's numbers, the investors' questions, the projection models I needed to revise. One afternoon, I was in a Zoom call with a group of Singaporean investors, presenting our Q2 growth model. My phone buzzed again and again, but I ignored it. I'd put it on silent. When I finally checked, I saw 5 missed calls from Ellie. I called her back during the short break between slides. "Jack fell off the jungle gym," she said. Her voice was strained. "He broke his arm. I've been at the ER for 2 hours. He asked for you." I stared at the screen, rows of data and bullet points about user engagement metrics. "Why didn't you text?" I asked, instantly regretting it. "Because I thought you'd want to know sooner than later," she said. Then silence. "Anyway, he's okay. They're casting it now. We'll be home late." And that night, I sat in Jack's room while he slept, his tiny arm in a bright blue cast. I wanted to blame the hospital for not calling me directly. I wanted to blame the time zone difference, the pitch deck, my executive assistant for not screening urgent calls. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had become the kind of father I used to resent. Ellie didn't mention the ER incident the next morning. She packed Jack's lunch, handed me coffee, and kissed his forehead goodbye. She didn't kiss me. There were other signs I ignored. I started skipping family breakfasts to prep for early meetings. When I was home on weekends, I spent them catching up on reports in my office. Ellie would take Jack to the park, and I'd stay behind. When they came back, sun-kissed and laughing, I'd tell myself I was doing the right thing, securing their future. But I was missing their present. I convinced myself I was doing it for them. But somewhere along the way, I'd stopped asking if that was even what they wanted. The year I turned 50, Forbes ran a feature calling me the man who can fix anything. The article painted me as a visionary, someone who could turn crumbling startups into gold mines, someone who solved impossible problems with a whiteboard, a marker, and an hour. They said I had the Midas touch, the instincts of Jobs, the clarity of Musk, the resilience of Bezos. There was a full-page photo of me standing in my glass-walled office, arms folded, skyline behind me like a throne. I posted the article on LinkedIn. It went viral in my industry circles. Congratulatory emails poured in from former classmates, colleagues, venture partners. I got messages like, "You're an inspiration. Teach me your ways. Living the dream, man." But when I brought the magazine home, Jack didn't look up from his iPad. Ellie didn't comment. It sat on the kitchen counter for a week, untouched, until one morning it disappeared. I never asked where it went. At the office, a new intern once asked me, innocently, "Do you have kids?" I nodded, trying to suppress the sting in my chest. "Yeah, one. A son." The intern looked surprised. "Really? Wow, I thought you were single. You're always here." That comment shouldn't have hurt, but it did. I started to notice how much of my identity was tied to work. The office felt more like home than my own house. The espresso machine knew my favorite roast. The receptionist remembered my dry cleaning preferences. The people I saw daily knew my stress cues, my meetings, my allergies. At home, Jack had to ask what I wanted for dinner. Ellie stopped setting an extra place for me at the table, just in case. I had an executive assistant who could coordinate 3 countries' travel in a day. But I didn't know Jack's shoe size, or the name of his math teacher. I had mastered user acquisition strategy, but couldn't explain why my son was afraid of thunderstorms without his mom around. At night, when I did make it home before bedtime, I felt like a stranger intruding. Jack was often already tucked in, whispering with Ellie about his day. I'd stand at the doorway, unsure if I should interrupt. Once I did, and he turned his back to me in bed. I kept telling myself I was doing what fathers do. I was building a future, I was ensuring stability, but in truth, I was hiding inside the one place I knew I wouldn't fail: work. Success had become my drug, measured in metrics, equity rounds, and public praise. It numbed the ache of emotional distance. It drowned out the growing silence at home. Every now and then I'd feel it, the emptiness, like the time I received a 7-figure bonus. I walked into a jewelry store, bought Ellie the necklace she once admired 5 years ago. I handed it to her that night, beaming, waiting for her face to light up. She opened the box, paused, and said softly, "Thank you. It's beautiful." But her eyes didn't smile. "Jack made you a card today," she added. "Left it on your desk." I hadn't seen it. I'd dumped my briefcase on top of it when I came in. Later that night, I found the card. A crayon drawing of our family, me, Ellie, and Jack holding hands. But in the picture, I was just a stick figure in the corner, wearing a tie, standing apart from the other two. The bonus felt like blood money. I started avoiding mirrors at home. Not because I looked older, but because I looked lost. I didn't recognize the man who once promised never to become his own father. Even my victories felt hollow. We landed a huge contract with a global firm. It was the deal of the year, one that solidified our position in the industry. My team popped champagne, slapped my back, called me the fixer. But that night, I celebrated alone in my office. No one called from home. No one was waiting. I had become the man the world respected, and the boy I once was would have feared. At some point, though I can't say exactly when, Ellie stopped waiting up for me. The porch light still came on at 9 p.m., but the living room no longer held the soft glow of her reading lamp, the faint scent of tea, or the comforting hum of the TV playing something neither of us truly watched. It was dark, quiet. Our home had adjusted to my absence as if it were just another renovation. Necessary, regrettable, permanent. She never said she was doing it alone. But the evidence was everywhere. Mornings began without me. Ellie packed Jack's lunch, reminded him to wear his jacket, signed his permission slips, checked his homework. She did it with the efficiency of someone who had long stopped expecting backup. When I stumbled in, bleary-eyed from a late-night call or an overnight flight, I'd hear them laughing in the kitchen, then silence when I entered. Jack had learned not to expect me. He no longer asked if I was coming to his games or recitals. He just stopped telling me when they were. His school calendar, once pinned to the fridge with magnets shaped like animals, disappeared. I asked Ellie about it once. "We keep it in his room now," she said without looking up from her laptop. That same room had changed too. Jack started closing his door more often. At first I thought it was normal for a growing boy. But then came the lock. A small, twist-button one, the kind parents usually forbid. I never questioned it. Maybe because deep down, I knew I'd lost the right. He began to carry a notebook everywhere, a small, spiral-bound thing. I caught glimpses, doodles, lists, maybe a journal. He always tucked it away when I walked in. "What you working on?" I asked once. "Nothing," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. He used to show me everything. Science projects, Lego builds, even bugs he found in the backyard. Now, I wasn't part of that world. I was an observer, not an invitee. Ellie adapted too, not just practically, but emotionally. She no longer argued about my schedule, no longer asked when I'd be home. She created routines that didn't include me. Parent-teacher conferences, dentist appointments, school fundraisers. I wasn't informed because I wasn't expected. One day, I noticed I hadn't seen a family text in a while. We had a group chat called the Three Musketeers, something Ellie created when Jack was 5. We used to share silly photos, inside jokes, random I love you messages. I opened my phone to check. The chat was still there, but I hadn't received a message in weeks. I scrolled. The last message from Ellie had been a photo of Jack's soccer game. "Big win today, 3-1, she wrote. No response from me. I had been in Dubai for a summit. I typed a message. "Sorry I missed it. Proud of him." No reply. Later that week, I opened the chat again and saw nothing. It was gone. I wasn't removed. The group itself no longer existed. They had started a new one. I knew because I saw Jack texting Ellie, laughing, then quickly hiding the screen when I walked by. That night, I confronted her. "Did you delete the group chat?" She looked up from folding laundry. "No, we just made a new one. Jack wanted to share memes without work stuff interrupting." It wasn't a cruel response, just honest. And it hurt in a way I didn't expect. It wasn't about the messages. It was about what they meant. I was no longer part of the default us. Still, I told myself this was just a phase, that families go through seasons, that when the company stabilized, I'd take time off. We'd go on vacation, reconnect. But Ellie didn't talk about vacations anymore. She talked about schedules, routines, logistics. Her hugs grew brief, perfunctory. Our kisses became forehead brushes, then nods, then nothing. One night I found Jack asleep on the couch. Ellie had dozed off beside him, both of them wrapped in a blanket, popcorn bowl still half full. Some movie credits rolled in the background. I stood in the doorway, wanting to join, unsure how. I stepped closer. Ellie stirred, looked up. Her eyes met mine, then drifted to the clock. "You're home early." It was past 10 p.m. She didn't say, "Come sit." Jack didn't wake up. So I turned off the TV and went upstairs. That was our new rhythm. Two people raising a child while living parallel lives, brushing past each other like strangers at a train station. And I, the man who once promised to be everything his father wasn't, had somehow come invisible in his own house. One evening, I came home a little earlier than usual, around 7:30. The house was quiet, but not empty. I could hear dishes clinking in the kitchen. Ellie was standing at the sink, her back to me, sleeves rolled up, eyes fixed somewhere far beyond the window. The moment I walked in, I sensed something was different, heavier. She didn't turn around when I said hello. "I'm home," I added, unnecessarily. Still silence. I moved closer. "Everything okay?" That's when she spoke, voice low but steady. "Do you even want to be a husband? Or a father? Because if you don't, just say it." I froze. She finally turned, eyes glistening. "I'm exhausted, Mark. Not from the house or Jack or work, from doing all of it alone while pretending like you're still part of this family." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. That was worse. She waited for something. An apology, a denial, a confession, anything. But I stood there, silent, like a man who had wandered into a storm without an umbrella and couldn't decide whether to run or stay still. She turned back to the sink. I thought so. That should have been a wake-up call. But I told myself she was just overwhelmed, that she'd cool off, that once the product launched, once the next quarter ended, things would ease up. I filed her pain under temporary tension and moved on. Jack's birthday was the following month. He was turning 11. I blocked the day on my calendar in advance, even turned down a networking dinner in San Francisco to be home. But no one mentioned anything to me. No party planning, no invitations, no cake options. I assumed Ellie was doing something small, maybe just dinner with close friends. On the morning of his birthday, I brought home a new bike, custom painted with his favorite color. I walked into the living room beaming, expecting smiles. The house was empty. I checked the fridge, no cake. Checked the dining room, no decorations. Then I saw it. A picture on Ellie's Instagram story. Jack, surrounded by kids holding balloons, smiling in front of a banner that read Level 11 Unlocked. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Timestamp, 2 hours ago. Caption: He's growing up so fast. I wasn't there. I hadn't even known. I walked out to the garage, set the bike down, and sat in the driver's seat of my car, gripping the steering wheel like it could hold me together. I didn't text. I didn't call. I just sat there, stunned, humiliated, forgotten. That night, when they returned, Jack ran past me straight to his room. Ellie followed behind with empty trays and gift bags. She didn't say a word. Neither did I. I told myself she didn't invite me out of spite. But deep down, I knew. She didn't invite me because Jack hadn't asked her to, and she hadn't pushed back. I wasn't just missing from the photo. I was missing from the memory. A few weeks later, I was in a boardroom downtown, finalizing a partnership that would put our software into over 200 school districts nationwide. It was a major win. After the meeting, I pulled out my phone to take a photo of the whiteboard with final numbers, and that's when I saw it. A story from Ellie's Instagram. A boomerang of Jack curled up on the couch, pale and drowsy, wrapped in blankets with a thermometer emoji overlay. Caption: Rough night. Fever at 103. Hoping this breaks soon. I stared at the post like it was a foreign language. My son was sick, very sick, and I had no idea. No one had called me. No one had texted. I found out from a social media update like a distant cousin. I stepped into the hallway and called Ellie. She answered after a long pause. "What's up?" "I just saw your post. Is Jack okay?" A sigh. "He's resting. It was bad last night, but the meds are helping." "Why didn't you call me?" She paused. "I did. You didn't answer. I left a voicemail. Then I stopped trying." I checked. She was right. One missed call, one message I hadn't opened, left at 2:14 a.m. I hadn't heard it. I'd been asleep in a hotel suite after celebrating the deal with champagne and startup founders half my age. "I'm his dad," I said quietly. "And I'm his everything," she replied. "Because that's what happens when one parent checks out." She didn't hang up, just stopped talking. The silence spoke louder than anything she could have said. These weren't warning signs anymore. They were consequences. But I still wasn't ready to face what they meant. I came home late one Thursday night and found Ellie at the kitchen table, laptop open, glasses on, a legal pad beside her covered in notes. At first, I thought it was work, school lesson plans maybe. But when I leaned closer, I saw a name printed in bold across the top of the screen. Anderson, White and Locke, Family Law Division. She didn't flinch. Didn't scramble to close the browser like someone caught in something shameful. She just looked up calmly and said, "We need to be prepared. That's all." I stood there, frozen. Prepared for what? She sighed. For what happens if nothing changes? I wanted to argue, to ask how she could consider tearing apart 20 years together. But all I managed was, "You talked to a lawyer?" "Not yet. Just reading," she said. Then, after a pause, "Jack deserves a stable home, one where he doesn't have to wonder if his dad's showing up, or if his mom's going to cry when no one's looking." I couldn't breathe. It was like the walls around me had caved in, and I was the last to realize we were buried. Later that week, Jack's teacher emailed both of us a copy of his hero essay, a school assignment where students were asked to write about the person they admired most. I opened the file at my desk between two meetings. The title was simple: My Hero, Mom. He wrote about how she always made his favorite soup when he was sick, how she helped him build the cardboard castle for his science project, how she never missed a single soccer game, even when it rained. He ended the essay with a sentence that burned into my brain: "My mom always shows up." I scrolled through the document twice, hoping, aching for a mention of me. A line, a sentence, anything. There was nothing. When I got home that evening, I tried to act normal. Jack was at the kitchen table, headphones on, drawing something. Ellie was folding laundry. The silence between us had become its own kind of language. I passed by Jack's room later and noticed his desk drawer slightly open. Normally, I wouldn't snoop, but something tugged at me. Maybe guilt. Maybe desperation. Inside was the same spiral notebook I'd seen him carrying for months. I flipped through carefully, not to disturb the pages. Near the back, written in pencil, was a short letter. No envelope. No salutation. Just a single line that looked like it had been written and erased several times. I wish Dad knew what I liked. Just once. I sat on his bed, notebook in hand, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. I could name our top clients, recite every product spec from memory, quote quarterly growth projections to 2 decimal points. But I didn't know what my son liked. His favorite meal. His favorite superhero. His favorite song. I had no idea. The next morning, I tried to make him breakfast, eggs and toast, like my mom used to make for me. Jack stared at the plate. "I don't like eggs," he said. "You used to," I offered weakly. "I was 5. He was 11 now, almost 12. I had missed the in-between. Ellie watched from the hallway. She didn't say a word, just picked up her keys and walked Jack to school. That weekend, I cleared my schedule, told my assistant to cancel every call, every meeting, every coffee. I even considered leaving my phone in a drawer. I wanted to reconnect, to fix what I'd broken. But no one was home. Ellie had taken Jack to visit her sister 2 towns over. She'd texted me the night before. I had missed it. Again. When they returned Sunday night, Jack went straight to his room. Ellie lingered in the hallway, then turned to me. "He asked me today if I thought you knew his middle name." I blinked. "Of course I do." She tilted her head, waiting. My mind went blank. "It's Thomas?" I guessed. She shook her head slowly. "It's Andrew. We picked it together, remember? After your grandfather." I had forgotten. I didn't even have an excuse. "I'm not trying to punish you, Mark," she said. "But you're disappearing. Not suddenly. Piece by piece. And I'm running out of ways to explain your absence to him without lying." She walked away before I could respond. That night, I stood in Jack's doorway, watching him sleep. The notebook was on his nightstand, closed, a pen resting on top. I thought of the letter, the line. I wish Dad knew what I liked. I realized that the man who had built an empire, commanded boardrooms, earned standing ovations, didn't even know how to reach his own son. This wasn't a crossroads anymore. It was a reckoning. It was a Thursday evening, the kind where the air hung thick with June heat and the scent of fresh-cut grass. Jack had a performance that night, his school's annual talent show. He'd been practicing a piano piece for weeks. Ellie had even bought him a new button-down shirt for the occasion. He tried it on the night before and asked cautiously, "You think Dad will come this time?" Ellie didn't answer. Neither did I. I just smiled and said I'd try. But I didn't. That morning, a last-minute strategy meeting got pushed to 6 p.m., a make-or-break pitch for a merger that could take our platform global. The timing was brutal, but I didn't flinch. It won't take more than an hour, I told myself. I'll be out in time. By 6:45, we were still talking projections. By 7:10, we were negotiating term sheets. By 7:35, I knew I wouldn't make it. I texted Ellie, "Tell Jack I'm sorry, something came up." She didn't respond. When I finally walked through the front door at 9:12 p.m., well, the house was dim. The performance had ended over an hour ago. Jack was still dressed in his concert clothes, sitting on the couch with his arms crossed and his lips pressed into a thin, pale line. The sleeves of his shirt were wrinkled. His hair, usually tousled from running around, was still combed back neatly. Like he had waited a long time for someone to say he looked nice. And no one did. Ellie stood behind him in the kitchen, drying a glass too slowly, too deliberately. Her silence felt like a verdict. "Hey, buddy," I said, trying to sound upbeat. "I'm really sorry about tonight. Something came up at work and—" "You always say that," Jack cut in. His voice was flat, controlled, too adult for a 12-year-old. I took a step closer. "I mean it. I wanted to be there, really. It was important to me." He turned his head, finally looking at me. And then, in the most matter-of-fact voice I've ever heard from my son, he said, "You're really good at running your company, Dad, but you suck at being a dad." The words hit like a punch to the ribs, not because they were loud, but because they weren't. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just stated it, like a fact, like something he'd rehearsed in his head 100 times. Ellie stopped drying the glass. I opened my mouth, ready to explain, to defend, to say all the things I always said, that I was working for him, that I was under pressure, that I didn't have a choice, but nothing came out. I couldn't lie. Not this time. Because the truth was, he was right. I stood there, silent, watching my son walk past me, up the stairs, one slow step at a time. I didn't follow. I didn't call out. I just let him go. Ellie didn't say anything either. She just placed the glass in the cabinet, turned off the kitchen light, and left me standing there in the dark. That night, I didn't work, didn't answer emails, didn't review numbers. I sat at the dining room table staring at a drawing Jack had made weeks ago. Our family, 3 stick figures, each holding hands. Only now I realized, in the drawing, the dad was wearing a tie and standing apart. I remembered something my father said once during one of his rare visits back when I was a kid. "People don't walk out all at once," he told me. "They disappear piece by piece until one day, there's nothing left to come back to." I used to hate him for that. Now I understood it. The next morning, the house was quiet, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that pressed against your chest, made your coffee taste bitter, and turned every creak of the floorboards into a confrontation. Ellie moved through the kitchen with surgical precision, pouring cereal, packing lunch, zipping Jack's backpack. No small talk, no sideways glance, just silence. Jack didn't come downstairs. "Still upset?" I asked carefully. She didn't answer, just handed me his backpack. "You can take him to school today." I blinked. "Really?" She nodded, but her eyes were cold. "You missed last night. Might as well make the morning count." When I entered Jack's room, he was already dressed, sitting at the edge of his bed, shoes untied, staring at the floor. "Ready to go?" I asked. He stood, walked past me without a word, and climbed into the car. The drive was 5 miles. We said nothing for all 5. That evening, after Jack was asleep, I found Ellie in the laundry room folding towels. Her shoulders looked tense, her jaw set. "I want to talk," I said. She didn't look up. "Now you want to talk. I know I messed up last night, a lot of nights. I'm trying." She dropped the towel mid-fold. "No, you're not trying, you're apologizing. Again. And it doesn't mean anything anymore." I took a breath, tried to stay calm. "I've been doing what I thought was right. Building something that gives us security." She turned sharply. "Security doesn't tuck Jack in at night. Security doesn't cheer from the bleachers. Security doesn't show up when he's scared or proud or just wants his dad." Her voice cracked, but she kept going. "You know why he flinches every time your phone rings?" I stayed silent. "Because he's learned it means you're about to disappear." That hit harder than I expected. She stepped closer, towel still half folded in her hands like she'd forgotten it was even there. "I used to tell him your job was important, that you were doing it for us. But he's not a baby anymore. He sees it, feels it. You're not doing it for us, Mark. You're doing it for you." "That's not fair," I snapped. "No," she said, quieter. "What's not fair is a little boy thinking his dad doesn't love him enough to show up. What's not fair is me sitting through piano recitals alone, making up stories about why you couldn't come. What's not fair is waking up every morning wondering if we still matter to you, or if we're just the polite background noise to your success." I felt my throat tighten. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. No, you don't understand what it's like to hold a family together by yourself." She finally dropped the towel in the basket and leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "I don't think Jack knows you anymore," she said. "And honestly, I'm not sure I do either." I stepped back, stunned. "Ellie." She held up a hand. "I'm tired, Mark. I'm tired of excuses. I'm tired of being the only adult in this house who remembers what love used to feel like." I wanted to yell, to fight, to defend myself, but there was nothing left to say that hadn't already been said. "Maybe it's not too late," I whispered. She shook her head slowly. "Maybe. But it's not early anymore." She walked past me up the stairs and didn't look back. I stood alone in the laundry room, surrounded by clean towels and dirty regrets. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I got in my car and drove, past the quiet houses with their lit-up porches, past the empty gas stations and closed diners, until I pulled into the parking lot of my office building. It was just after midnight. The security guard gave me a nod as I entered. He'd seen me come and go at odd hours for years now, never questioned it. The elevator hummed its familiar tune as I rose to the 17th floor, the top of the building that bore my name. My office lights came on automatically, casting long shadows across the glass walls. Everything looked polished, organized, exactly the way I'd instructed my assistant to keep it. The shelves lined with awards, the framed article from Forbes, the sleek mahogany desk with dual monitors still glowing from my last login. But it was the photo that stopped me. It sat in the far right corner of my desk, a picture from 8 years ago. Ellie holding Jack at age 4, all three of us smiling wide on a beach in California, my arm around both of them. Jack had a sun hat too big for his head. Ellie's laugh had been caught mid-burst. I remembered the moment. I remembered the way Jack had shouted at the waves like they were dragons. I hadn't looked at the photo in months. Now the colors were faded. The frame was dusty. I picked it up slowly and held it in both hands, like it might shatter if I squeezed too hard. And then, without warning, I broke. Not the silent kind of crying I'd done at funerals or at the end of exhausting days. This was something deeper. My whole body shook. I leaned forward, clutching the photo, sobbing like a man who had finally stopped pretending he hadn't lost everything. Because I had. In my pursuit of greatness, I had become exactly what I swore I never would be. A man so consumed by his own ambition that he forgot how to be present. I thought of my father, the man who walked away. I used to tell myself I was different because I stayed. But staying isn't the same as showing up, and in all the ways that mattered, I had vanished. Somewhere between the crying and the silence, I opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keys, then moved with purpose. I typed out a resignation letter. Subject, effective immediately. I addressed it to my board of directors, my co-founders, my legal counsel. I spared them the drama. No self-pity, just the facts. I was stepping down as CEO, permanently. I told them I had personal matters to prioritize, that the company would be in good hands, that this decision wasn't sudden, but long overdue, and I meant every word. When I hit send, a wave of panic washed over me. My stomach dropped, my palms went cold. I had spent 15 years building this company from scratch, pitch by pitch, sleepless night by sleepless night. It was my legacy, my identity, until I realized it had also been my excuse, my shield, my hiding place. And I was done hiding. I stood by the window and looked out at the city skyline, those towers I once dreamt of reaching, now just concrete reminders of everything I'd missed while climbing. Somewhere in that sprawl, Ellie and Jack were sleeping. Or maybe she was lying awake, wondering what more she could do before giving up completely. Maybe Jack was dreaming of dragons again. Maybe he wasn't dreaming at all. All I knew was that when the sun rose, I'd be different. Not magically redeemed, not instantly forgiven, but finally honest. The man who walked into that building at midnight was a CEO. The man who walked out before dawn was just a father trying to find his way back. The press conference was scheduled for 10 o'clock a.m. sharp. By 9:30, the room was full. Reporters, shareholders, industry analysts, and employees whispering speculations. A few camera crews were already rolling, their lenses pointed at the podium with the company's blue and white logo behind it. No one expected me to resign. Not like this. I stood backstage holding my notes, hands clammy despite the air conditioning. My PR team had drafted a statement, something polished, professional, vague enough to keep the stock from dipping. But I wasn't going to read it. When I walked up to the microphone, the room fell silent. I looked out at faces I'd known for years. Some had helped me build this place from nothing. Others had just joined last quarter. I cleared my throat. Thank you all for coming. I'll keep this brief. I paused, eyes sweeping the room. For 15 years, I've poured everything into this company. I've sacrificed sleep, weekends, holidays. I've missed birthdays, school plays, and conversations that should have mattered more than contracts or quarterly targets. And I justified it by telling myself I was doing it for my family. I swallowed hard. But the truth is, I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for me. Because success felt safer than intimacy. Metrics were easier than emotions. And I've come to realize, too late for some things, maybe not for others, that I've been a great CEO and a poor father. A few gasps. Pens stopped moving. Phones kept recording. So today, I'm stepping down, effective immediately. Not for burnout, not for a new venture. I'm stepping down because I have a 12-year-old son who deserves a father who shows up. And I have a wife who's held our family together without me for too long. I stepped away from the microphone, heart pounding. No applause. Just silence. And it felt right. That afternoon, I picked up Jack from school. I didn't send a driver. I didn't roll up in a luxury sedan while checking emails on Bluetooth. I rode a bike. A used one I bought that morning. Jack stood at the school gate, backpack slung over one shoulder, squinting in confusion as I pulled up. "Where's the car?" he asked. I handed him a helmet. Thought we'd try something different. He didn't smile, but he climbed onto the second bike waiting beside me. We rode home in silence, except for the hum of the tires and the occasional squeak of brakes. I kept glancing sideways, wondering what he was thinking. When we reached the driveway, he parked the bike, took off his helmet, and said, "You're gonna be sore tomorrow." I grinned. Probably. The next morning I made pancakes, real ones, from scratch, burned the first batch, nailed the second. Ellie walked into the kitchen in her robe, blinking like she'd seen a ghost. "You're cooking?" "I'm learning," I said. Jack sat down without a word, took a bite, then another. "They're okay," he muttered. "High praise," I said. He smirked, just slightly, but it was a start. That weekend, I cleared out the home office, took down the whiteboard, unplugged the monitors, boxed up the framed accolades. Jack peeked in halfway through. "What are you doing?" "Making space." "For what?" "For us." I had already ordered a small keyboard, a couple of beginner guitars, and a stack of music books. Jack had mentioned months ago that he liked music, specifically composing little tunes on his school's music app. I hadn't listened then. I was listening now. When the instruments arrived, I waited until he came home and showed him. No speech, no expectations, just an invitation. He ran his fingers along the keyboard, pressed a few notes, then turned to me. "Can I show you something?" "Yes, always yes." We spent the next hour building a simple melody together. He taught me how to loop tracks. I taught him how to play a basic chord progression. He laughed when I messed up. I didn't care. The room that once hosted late-night strategy sessions and IPO rehearsals now echoed with off-key notes and father-son laughter. At dinner that night, Ellie placed 2 plates on the table, then hesitated. She turned to me. "Are you staying?" I nodded. "Every night I can." She sat. Didn't say anything, but she didn't look away either. That was enough, for now. The gesture wasn't grand because it made headlines. It was grand because it was real. Because it was the first time I stopped asking the world to admire me and started asking my family to trust me again. I thought stepping down would change everything. I expected the weight to lift, for the silence at home to thaw, for Jack to smile again and Ellie to soften. But real life isn't a movie. Grand gestures don't flip switches. They start long, uphill climbs. The first week, things stayed civil, but distant. Ellie remained polite. She thanked me when I took out the trash, nodded when I offered to drive Jack to school, smiled tightly when I made dinner. But I could see it in her eyes. Doubt. She'd seen promises before. She'd heard the speeches. What she hadn't seen, at least not yet, was consistency. Jack was tougher. One morning after making his usual pancakes, I placed the plate in front of him. He barely looked up. "Thanks," he muttered, stabbing at the food. "Anything else you want with it?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "A dad who shows up even when it's not breakfast." It hit harder than I expected, but I didn't push back. I just nodded. Fair. Later that afternoon, we sat side by side in the new music room. He played a short melody he'd composed. I told him it was good. He shrugged. "You don't have to pretend." "I'm not," I said. "I mean it." He stared at the keyboard. "You can't just show up now and expect everything to be okay." "I don't expect that," I said softly. "I just want to show up anyway." He didn't respond, but he didn't leave either. Friends reached out in waves. Some praised me, said I was brave. A few coworkers called it bold leadership, but others weren't so kind. "You stepping down for real?" one old colleague texted. "Or is this some kind of rebrand move?" "You trying to launch a fatherhood podcast or something?" another joked. Someone even commented under my resignation post, "Wow, marketing game strong. CEO goes soft. Film at 11. I ignored most of it, but it lingered. The insinuation that I was doing this for attention, that it was a PR stunt. Even Ellie asked, days after the press conference, "You sure this isn't just temporary guilt?" I didn't blame her for the question. Not after years of disappointments. But it still hurt. "No, I told her. It's not guilt. It's clarity. And it's not temporary." She nodded, but the line between belief and skepticism remained. I started doing school drop-offs every morning. The first time I showed up at the classroom door, Jack's teacher blinked in surprise. "You're Jack's dad?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She smiled, then turned to Jack. "You didn't say your dad was coming." Jack didn't meet her eyes. I didn't think he would. The sentence hung in the air longer than it should have. One night, after movie time, I reached out to ruffle Jack's hair like I used to when he was little. He ducked away. "I'm not 5 anymore," he said. "I know," I replied, "but I still miss that version of you." He paused, then said quietly, "I miss that version of you too." A few days later, we were sitting at the kitchen table again, pancakes on the plate. I'd added strawberries this time, shaped like hearts, something he used to love. He stared at the plate, then looked up at me. "Don't try to buy me with food," he said. "I'm not dumb." "I know you're not." "Then stop trying to make me like you with pancakes." I swallowed. "I'm not trying to make you like me. I'm just here, and I'm trying to stay. He looked at me for a long moment, eyes narrowed like he was testing my sincerity. Then he picked up his fork and started eating. No smile, no warmth. But he stayed at the table until the last bite. That night, Ellie sat beside me on the couch for the first time in weeks. Not close, not touching, but next to me. Progress. "You're still here," she said, almost surprised. "I will be," I answered. She nodded slowly. "Then I guess we'll see." They weren't ready to believe me. Not yet. But they were watching, and I was finally showing up where it mattered. It started with a note. I found it on my nightstand one Friday afternoon. A scrap of paper torn from Jack's notebook, folded twice, scribbled in handwriting I hadn't seen up close in years. "Want to play Mario with me after school today?" Just one line. But it might as well have been a 10-page letter. For the first time in months, maybe years, Jack was inviting me in. Not out of obligation or guilt, but by choice. I was sitting on the couch, controller in hand, when he walked through the front door. He paused for a moment, like he wasn't sure I'd actually show up. I held up the controller. "You're going down." He grinned. "In your dreams." We played for almost an hour. He beat me, repeatedly. I didn't even pretend to be good at it. I just laughed when he did. Asked him questions. Let him explain cheat codes and power-ups like he was teaching a masterclass. He looked more alive than I'd seen in years, and for the first time in a long time, I felt it too. Connection. The next week, Ellie mentioned a school picnic. "It's on Saturday," she said, pouring coffee. "Jack's class is going. Parents are invited." I waited, unsure if she was just informing me or offering. "Would you want to come?" she added, almost cautiously. "Yes," I said before she could finish the sentence. Her eyebrows lifted. "You sure? Outdoors? Kids? Noise?" "I'm not allergic to any of that," I said. "Well," she said, cracking the faintest smile, "you used to be." Saturday came. We packed sandwiches, juice boxes, a blanket. Jack carried the frisbee. Ellie brought the sunscreen. We looked like a family. No, we were a family, just one trying to remember how to move in sync again. At the park, Jack ran off with friends. Ellie and I sat side by side on the blanket, watching the kids tumble through grass. She passed me a sandwich. "You're not checking your phone," she said. "I left it in the car." She blinked. "Seriously?" "Seriously." She stared at me for a moment, then nodded. "Good." Later that day, Jack called me over to play catch. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know if he actually meant it. "You coming or what?" he yelled. I smiled. "Be right there." We tossed the ball for 15 minutes, laughing, arguing over who dropped what. When we sat down to rest, Jack nudged me and said, "You're not bad, old man." "I'm training," I said. "Rematch next week?" "You're on." That night, at home, we ate dinner together. Something simple, just pasta and salad. But no one turned on the TV. No one rushed through it. We talked, laughed. Ellie told a story about a second grader who tried to bring a snake to show and tell. Jack nearly spit his water. I added a joke about my first failed science fair volcano. The sound of our laughter filled the kitchen. It was foreign at first, then familiar, like a song we'd all forgotten the lyrics to but somehow remembered the chorus. After dinner, Jack helped me with dishes. Ellie wiped down the counters. Music played softly in the background, some jazz playlist Ellie liked. Jack started humming. I joined in. He rolled his eyes but didn't tell me to stop. As the weeks passed, more moments like these came. Jack asked if I wanted to help with a school project, building a replica of the solar system. I said yes. We used styrofoam balls and old paint from the garage. He did most of the work, but let me hold Saturn steady while he attached the rings. Ellie and I started having real conversations again. Not just about bills or schedules, but dreams, regrets, memories. She mentioned wanting to go back to grad school someday. I told her I'd be there for every class, every paper, every late night. She smiled, but didn't respond. One evening while we were doing the dishes, she said, "You're different." "I'm trying." She nodded. "I see that." It wasn't a declaration of forgiveness, but it was something. The healing wasn't quick. It wasn't dramatic. It came slowly, like spring thawing out a long winter. Some days were better than others. Jack still had moments of silence. Ellie still had walls. But we were rebuilding. Not the way things were. Better. By early spring, our home felt different. Not just quieter or less tense, but warmer, lighter. The kind of space where voices overlapped without sharp edges, where laughter wasn't rare or rehearsed, and silence no longer meant distance. Jack started talking more. Not just the quick answers or cautious half-sentences I'd gotten used to, but real thoughts. He told me about school, about the comic series he was drawing, about a dream he had of building a treehouse where each level was a different video game world. I listened. Every word. And I didn't try to fix anything. I just stayed present. One night after dinner, we were sitting on the couch and he leaned against me. Not much, just a small shift in weight. Then he said, "You know, I used to hate green." I turned to him, surprised. "Really?" "Yeah, but now I like it. Especially that deep forest green." I smiled. "I know." He blinked. "You do? You painted your Lego base that color. You picked the green hoodie 3 times this week. And your new backpack has green straps." He stared at me for a second, like he was trying to read something behind my eyes. Then he grinned, wide, proud, honest. "You're the only one who noticed." That sentence stayed with me for days. Meanwhile, Ellie had started sending out applications, quietly at first, unsure if she still had the rhythm after all these years. But she got an offer to teach part-time at the community college, and she lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her voice got faster when she talked about lesson plans. She stayed up reading again, not out of duty, but passion. "You're going to be amazing," I told her one night, as she sat on the edge of the bed, notebook in hand. She gave me a look, not skeptical, but cautious. "I mean it," I said. "You've been carrying everyone else's dreams for so long. It's your turn now." She didn't cry, she just nodded. "Thanks." One Saturday morning, Jack burst into the kitchen holding a sketch pad. "What if we started a YouTube channel?" he asked. "Like for kids, about books and stories. We could read them, act them out. Mom could do the voices." Ellie raised an eyebrow. "Me? You're the best at voices," he said, beaming. "And Dad could do the sound stuff. He's good at tech, right?" I tried to play it cool. "I dabble." He opened the sketch pad and showed us the logo he'd drawn. A smiling book with cartoon eyes and tiny arms. "It's called Storytime House." And just like that, we were a team. We set up a little studio in the corner of the living room, hung blankets for sound, Jack built a makeshift set with construction paper backdrops and hand-painted props. Ellie picked out books, some classics, some new. I handled the lights, the mic, the editing software. Our first episode was rough. Jack stumbled on his lines. Ellie couldn't stop laughing when she tried to do the pirate voice. I forgot to hit record the first time. But we had fun. Real, deep belly laugh kind of fun. People started watching. Not thousands, but enough. Friends shared it. Teachers sent kind messages. And every time we uploaded a new video, Jack beamed with pride. "This is the dream," he said once after we finished filming an episode on where the wild things are. "I used to imagine doing this with my family, but I didn't think it would ever happen." I didn't say anything. I just put my arm around him and pulled him close. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about redemption or legacy or making up for the past. I was just a dad, next to his son, doing something small and joyful, together. Some nights, after Jack's gone to bed and the house settles into its quiet rhythm, Ellie reading by the lamp, the dishwasher humming in the background, I sit at the kitchen table with a notebook open in front of me. Not a business journal, not a strategy planner, just a blank page, and thoughts that used to never have a place to land. I used to believe that time with family was something you earned, like a reward at the end of a long, successful road. The logic seemed sound. Build the empire first, secure the future, then return home a hero. That's what I told myself. That's what the world told me. But now I know better. Family isn't the finish line. It's the foundation. Everything I thought I was building, wealth, security, legacy, meant nothing without the people I claimed to be building it for. You can't store love in a savings account. You can't schedule connection for someday. You either show up now, or you risk not being part of the picture at all. Jack once asked me, "Were you ever like me?" I didn't know how to answer. I had been like him once, curious, hopeful, desperate for someone to just sit beside me and say, "I see you." But somewhere along the way, I traded my curiosity for control, my presence for prestige, and he nearly grew up without ever really knowing me. Now, things are different. Not perfect, but real. We eat dinner together most nights. We argue about movies. We play board games. Ellie still gives me looks when I load the dishwasher wrong. Jack rolls his eyes when I ask too many questions during his video games. But it's life. Shared, messy, beautifully unscripted life. Sometimes people still ask why I walked away from the company, why I gave up the title, the influence, the salary. I tell them this, because no accolade ever asked how my day was, because no quarterly report ever hugged me goodnight, because no investor ever looked at me the way Jack did when I showed up to his science fair and said, "I knew you'd come." That look? You don't earn that with stock options. You earn it by being there, over and over, until the doubt fades. If you're reading this and still have time, still have a family waiting, a child hoping, a partner hanging on, please, for their sake and yours, don't wait until they stop expecting you to show up. Choose them. Not after the promotion, not after the IPO, not after the noise settles. Now. Because one day, you'll wake up and realize the only legacy worth leaving is the love you gave, the time you spent, and the memories you built with the people who matter most. And trust me, they won't care what was in your portfolio. They'll remember if you were there.